Welcome to the shop. I have the FMS Ranger 1.2 ready to fly. Ready to fly meaning transmitter, receiver, battery, gyro, charger, everything you need to fly this plane. But the one thing that's super critical is how to set it up for success. Setting up the control throws, setting up the center of gravity, making sure the gyro works. This transmitter doesn't enable you to change rates in expo, and those are really critical for the new pilot. I'm going to go into details on how you do it mechanically and what that really is, and or how can you make changes through the reflex gyro. I'm going to go into all those details to get this plane set up from, all right, you've assembled it, now what? All the way to get you ready for your first maiden. So in this video, I'm going to cover all of that. In the description below, I'm going to have links to all kinds of stuff as far as the pieces and parts I use during assembly, as well as on setup. Also the plane. If you have any questions, leave a comment. If you like this kind of video, hit that like button. Really helps me out. Appreciate it. Stick around. All right, we're going to start with a fully assembled Ranger. Prop is off. And now we're going to set this up. And I'm going to go through the steps I'm going to do for a ready-to-fly Ranger. And it's different. I'm specifying that it's the ready-to-fly because you have this controller. And this controller has some limitations to it. You can't adjust the throws. Okay? And it's important when I'm saying the throws, or we'll also say rates, we'll use those terms, you know, pretty much either way. It's the amount of deflection this control surface or any of the control surfaces basically move. And if there's a lot of movement, the plane is hard to control. For a newer pilot, that's not ideal. Also with this radio, as far as reducing that sensitivity, you can't do any of that on the radio. So we have to do it either mechanically by adjusting the linkages. By adjusting these linkages, we can reduce the throw mechanically. Or there's another way we can do it, and that is through the reflex gyro that's in your ready to fly. We can adjust the amount of throw it has for optimize and off. So I'm going to go through that process. You know, take you through how I do that to set it up using these little tools here, or you can just use a ruler. And there's an ideal amount of throw or movement in the ailerons and elevator that you can adjust, and I'm going to go through that process. In the documentation, it talks about control throws, and they'll have high rates and low rates. And here, for low rates, if you're a beginner pilot, you're going to definitely want the lower rate. Let's say 10 millimeters of elevator and aileron movement up and down. 10 millimeters up, 10 millimeters down. Right? So we want to get to that point. And we can do that, and in the manual, it also talks about this. As far as the clevises and the horns and the arms. So you have a servo arm and a control surface horn. All right, so, and it shows you as far as, hey, you want more throw, here's how you set that up. If you want less throw, you want to set it up this way. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to move the control surfaces as far down as we can on the servo end and as high up as we can on the control surface. Let me show you what that looks like. Let's measure the control surface on this aileron. I've got this neat little tool here that clamps onto the wing. It has a little friction, little rubber on these ends right here. It offers a little friction. If we look at that, and hopefully you can read that well, we're going to see how much it deflects up, and almost 20 millimeters. So if you are flying this and you're at 20 millimeters, that's way too much throw for a beginner pilot. Way too much. It'll be very difficult to control. So what I want to do is, and this is where we talk about reducing the amount of throw, either mechanically or through the reflex. Let's first do mechanically, and then we'll come back and remeasure. If you don't have the cool adjuster, the little tool there, You can take a ruler and just slide it in there. And we're at the 60 mark. Hard for me to do this and film at the same time. There we go. So we can kind of see it's about the same amount, about 20. All right, very simply, we're just pushing back on that tubing, prying open the clevis, and pulling the clevis out. Now we want to move it down to the lowest hole we possibly can on the aileron here. So I'm going to rotate, that comes out, and I'm going to go, I don't know if it'll work this low, but let's give it a try. So I'm going to put that there, and when I put this back in, I'm going to notice that these aren't neutralized really anymore. I didn't move it that much, but it's a little, it pulled it forward, right, because it's slightly lower. So I need to rotate the clevis out. I'm going to rotate it out one full turn and see now if that lines up perfectly. And it does. I'm happy with this. Needs to be flush right along here and on this side as well. So I don't know if you can see that well, but that's what we just did. So I dropped it all the way down to the lowest position on the servo arm, and it's on the highest position on the control surface. Okay, and then I neutralize it. Going to do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll test it. All right, we just adjusted, mechanically moved the control rod to the lowest part of the servo, and let's see what we get now. So we get under 10. Man, that's perfect. That's what we want for a beginner plane, is to have it nice and low like that. So that's one way to do it. So on the back end here, we're going to do something similar. We're going to make adjustments. It was in the second one from the top, and we're going to move it down. The problem is that in some cases you'll see this where that control arm, or the servo arm here, actually the hole was drilled out slightly. So in order to do that, we need to drill that hole out just a little bit with the right bit. We're going to go through with the little hand drill, make a little hole, make it slightly larger so this control rod slides in there, and then we'll make the fix. All right, I just made my holes with my little hand drill, and we're going to put this there, rotate it, and put it back in the upper control arm, little horn. I keep mixing up my terms, but all right. So that is going to be the minimum amount of throw. Do need to adjust that because when I made that change, and I need to push this out a little bit. So I'm going to have one full rotation, pushing it out, which makes this, puts this back in the neutral position where we need it. Yeah, I'm happier with that. Get it the right one. Okay. All right, get that all put back. Okay, now we're good to go. So I'm measuring this right here, and I can tell that it is, I can tell that this is still more than 10 millimeters of throw. It's about 14. Even though I made that mechanical adjustment. So this is where I might go into the reflex gyro, and I'll show going through that process. If you have a reflex gyro, you're going to need this FMS app. I have a whole video on adjusting it and setting it up and such. You might want to check that out. But here I'm just going to show how I'm going to go through this system. I'm going to go to the parameters, make adjustments to both the ailerons and the elevator just to show that that's how you do it, that slide bar that I just moved there. And then I'm going to synchronize and get out of it. And that's stored now in that reflex gyro. And now when I do the throws, remember before it was about 14, and now it's 10. So that's an easy way to make adjustments also with using the reflex. Checking the CG and adjusting the center of gravity is a critical part of making sure your plane flies well. This Ranger was set up to have a very forgiving center of gravity. According to this, it's 50 to 60 millimeters from the leading edge of the wing, and they show you a little diagram. Be careful on exactly where they're showing on the diagram, because that point isn't to scale all the time on every plane. Base it off of the numbers they're giving you there, and you can always take a look in RC groups to see what other people are doing or look at other videos. I try to set mine up the same way on my setup videos to show you exactly where it is. So 50 to 60 millimeters from the leading edge of the wing. Got our ruler here. Gonna flip the plane upside down because that's how we're going to hold and measure it. And hopefully we can see. Look there. So there's 50 to 60. So on the Ranger, there's this little piece right here. You can see it. And basically the 50 to 60 is somewhere right on the other side of that line right there. So what I do, after I have it completely set up, battery and everything included, I will hold my fingers on that point, have the plane right side up like this. High wings, you adjust it this way. And I'll put my fingers there, and this should be level and or a little nose down. I don't have the prop and spinner on there, so it's not going to look perfect. But most of the time, you have a 1300 battery, put it all the way forward, and you'll be fine. But it's a critical part to make sure that your plane will fly well with proper CG. Your Ranger, ready to fly, has that gyro that we've talked a lot about. One of the critical parts is making sure the control surfaces work properly on the plane, of course. Left, right, up, down, and then left, right, as far as all the control surfaces are working fine from the controller. But the gyro is also controlling the surfaces, steadying them, stabilizing them. This switch right here on your FlySky, when it's in the down position, that is called stabilized mode, and that means your plane is self-leveling. And you can tell that by this control surface. When I move it, it stays down because it's basically pushing the aileron to the point where, because it wants to level. And you'll notice when you're playing with your plane to see which control, which setting you're in. If it stays in a fixed position, you're in stabilized mode. Same thing with the elevator. If I move up, you'll see that the elevator is pointing up a little bit. If I put the plane pitching straight up, you'll notice the elevator is trying to get the plane to level off. And once it's level, it'll look like so. Okay, so that's stabilized mode. If I put it in the middle position, there is no gyro at all. You don't hear the servos moving or anything. If I put it in the forward position all the way up, then the control surfaces move, but then they go back to neutral. And that is for wind mitigation. That's called optimized mode. So just kind of the three modes: stabilize, self-level; off, there's nothing; and optimize, which gives you wind stability. So just thought that was important to hear the differences and how to test it. All right, I've installed the prop, which means I am done with setup, and I am ready to go to the field to fly. I've made numerous videos on how to maiden and your first flying of these planes. Check out those videos. There's links in the description below. But basically from here, you've got all your control surfaces set, your gyro is set. Everything is setting you up for success. And if you're not making some of those changes, you're going to have a really tough maiden flight. So anyway, good luck. Have fun.